When I was your age, you had to actually, go to the record store and buy something, or go to the college radio station and listen to stuff or tape stuff off of your friends. Now, virtually everything ever recorded by anybody can be found on the internet. As Louis C.K. is fond of saying, it's a miracle. Oh, I'm sorry, not Louis C.K. I believe that's Jim. As Patton Oswalt is fond of saying of iPods, it's a miracle and nobody cares. It's absolutely, if you had told me in 1992 when I was, slavishly taping records at my college radio station, I could pretty much have access to anything I wanted for free if I was willing to ignore certain debatable realities about copyright. I would have thought you were insane and that I had died. But that means that if you are assigned a band to review that you've never heard of, if your editor comes to you and says, you have to cover this, there's really no excuse for not being at least a little bit familiar with the band's music and with writing about that band. The flip side of that is that because of the sheer volume of material available, and because everybody is reading everybody else, critical thinking about any particular act has a tendency to flatten out, has a tendency to hit a sort of mean level of regard. If you're trying to get a sense, I think the best way to do this is to literally, somebody just give me a band name and we can go through the process of what you would do to familiarize yourself with that band. Everybody sort of, yes?
Does have the key.
Okay. That's a good example because they're a band that I remember from, growing up with indie rock. But by the time they started, we were in what I thought was a god-awful period for American indie rock. That 97 to 99 area, that was just a wasteland for them. But that's just me. A lot of other people think I'm insane, and most of that has to do with, how old you were when you were in college, I think. They say the golden age of comic books is 12, and the golden age of indie rock is probably around 1921. So, like any other human being on the planet right now, you start with Google. And you're going to be able to see something that my editors just love. It's what a god-awful typist I am. And I apologize in advance. Next, see, for example, I can't spell for. So let's say that you have absolutely no idea who Death Cab for Cutie are. You have two options, internet-wise. You can click straight on their website and get what the band's view of themselves is. Or you can click, your first three options that pop up are the band's official website, the band's MySpace page, and the band's Wikipedia entry. Not in that order. I'm sure your journalism professors have given you long, stern lectures about about how it's unwise to use Wikipedia for anything. I disagree with that for particular reasons. I don't recommend using biographical information or as a sole source. However, Wikipedia is useful for, you get a rough history of the band. And something I think that's worth thinking about regarding Wikipedia is, and I've just sort of found this through using it and reading it and just sort of knowing a lot about the way subcultures work, the more obscure the topic that appears on Wikipedia, the more likely the information is to be, if not accurate, then written by somebody who knows what they're talking about. I'm sure someone, you know, I can imagine somebody storming in here and, you know, dragging me off to Guantanamo for saying that. But I've just seen it be true that the more devoted to a topic people are, the more detail you're going to get from a Wikipedia entry. Now, you guys aren't stupid. You can tell from these things when it's been slapped together and when it's been taken a look at by a number of eyes. And if all the facts are checkable with, you know, more than one source. I mean, you should never use Wikipedia as a single source for anything. I mean, that's just journalism 101. However, you do get a rough sense of where the band's been, where they're going. You know, their musical style, I wouldn't necessarily take that as gospel, because that's your job, is to sort of figure out. I mean, your job as a critic is to raise the level of debate about any particular topic. That's pretty much your job in a sense. Raise the level of debate. And when you're talking about a band that you don't know anything about, it's helpful to have some sort of look at what's already been said about them and new ways of saying it. Now, the nice thing about Wikipedia is, especially for music, is their discography section. You can click on virtually any record. Let's pick the breakout album, Transatlanticism, which I think was their breakout, but can't remember anymore. And you get professional reviews along this side. Now, you can learn some sort of interesting things about this just from a quick glance at this. Pitchfork, arguably the most influential publication writing about, you know, music about white people, gave it a 6.4. Not a great score. Bob Christgau thought there was 1 or 2 good songs on it. Spin gave it 4 stars, probably out of a sense of professional obligation. All Music loved it, but they liked virtually everything. Rolling Stone gave it its patented 3.5 stars review. The joke is that Rolling Stone 3.5 stars means never having to say you're sorry. And Tiny Mixtapes, I don't know anything about, but they seem pretty much on board with Rolling Stone. So you can click on the link. I love Wikipedia, it's all just laid out for you, and it makes researching that much faster. That's basically what the internet does, is it just cuts time in smaller and smaller fractions for getting things like this done. So you get a sense of, you know, Terry Sang. I don't particularly know this writer. You can get a sense of what Terry Sang thought about it. You can see why Pitchfork had a problem with it. Yeah, I don't know why anybody would write this much about this record. You know, I don't know who William Morris is, other than, you know, possibly related to the agency, but this is bonkers. Yeah, you may not have that kind of time, especially because you're going to be wanting to form your own opinions about this stuff that are nonetheless grounded in some sort of not received wisdom, but some sort of logic. Like, you know, you don't want to go to a Death Cab for Cutie show and say this was one of the best hip hop performances I've ever seen, unless you can make a really, really interesting argument for it. And I don't really see that happening. But what you get is you just get a sort of sense of, you know, what people have written about them, where each record stands in relation to each other record. You know, the EPs don't usually get reviewed, but you get a sense of sort of what songs the band thought was important. You know, like from this Studio X sessions, you can find out that they wanted to, you know, it's likely that you'll hear the New Year Blacking Out the Friction, Bend to Squares, or Army Corps of Architects in one of their sets. It's a song that they go to for their live performance, and you know, one of their older songs. And you know, you might hear that one. You know, Plans was Pitchfork still not wild about it. Bob Christgau still thinks there's like 1 or 2 good songs. Rolling Stone, 3 stars. But it got a much longer review. This looks like the length of a lead, so which tells you a couple things. One, this was the most interesting album out that week, or the one that they thought was the most important. 2, they assigned their cleanup hitter, Rob Sheffield, to it. And I mean, his reviews are just an object lesson in how to write cleanly, smartly, with wit. I mean, you want to see a guy doing backflips. I don't even know if they're on the internet anymore, but that dude mastered the art of the Passendock, Village Voice Passendock Critics Poll comment, as well as, you know, I don't know, 16th century Japanese poet who nailed down haiku. He just, you know, his Passendock critics comments should be, you know, are going in the canon. They're absolutely brilliant. Sorry, that was sort of aside. But that was, so you get a little bit of a sense of what people have said about this music. Now, going back to the original Google search for this. Now, I usually go, if I have no idea what a band sounds like, I usually go to MySpace first. I thought MySpace was a freaking miracle when it started because it does something kind of interesting. I know everybody sort of, you know, gives it shit for bad layout or whatever, or sort of standardized, you know, ugliness. But the neat thing about MySpace is it sort of flattens out the dialogue between bands in a way that I think is really interesting. Like, Bob Dylan's page looks essentially like the page of any singer-songwriter from Mondrian, Wyoming, who just put up their first couple of demos. And I think that does something very interesting to the way that you perceive music. You know, that they have figured out this format that every band plugs themselves into. I'm not explaining that well, but I just find it intriguing that the biggest bands in the world, their MySpace page looks like the smallest bands in the world. They have to conform to these certain design elements. And I find that sort of weirdly, you know, sort of humbling. And, you know, that at the end of the day, it's still just like a bunch of people playing music. I don't have Flash for this. This isn't my computer, but if I got a Flash upgrade, there would be a little box here, as you're all well aware, with songs on it. And this is the best way to check out virtually any artist that has a MySpace page. I mean, MySpace, I think, has done extraordinary things for music. It's just made it so much easier to survey artists. Now, you can also make you know, a lot of people have made the argument that, you know, one of the things the internet has done is suck the value out of music. I mean, you know, literally the economic value out of it by making it free, and that's a different discussion. But in terms of what you want it for, check out bands that you don't necessarily know, see news updates that you might not necessarily have heard. It's invaluable. So you click here and you hear a couple of the newest songs. And then from there, you can sort of see what's going on with the band. Like, let's view all blog entries. So let's see. October 29th, Ben Gibbard and Jay Farrar on Soundcheck. this tells you a couple of things. They are, Ben and Jay, I guess, have this new record of, based on Kerouac?
Yeah, Big
Is
Sur.
that correct? Okay. This record showed up and sort of like flew by me without being able to sort of acknowledge it. And I kept thinking it was more Woody Guthrie stuff, like that Billy Bragg record from a couple of years ago, but no, it's a Kerouac thing. The other thing you learn is that, and as you were all probably well aware, Ben Gibbard and Jay Farrar are safe for public radio because they're doing sessions on NYC Soundcheck, and Morning Becomes Eclectic, and you can sort of get a sense of where they are culturally now. Like, you know, that sort of music is what NPR thinks that its audience wants to hear, and that tells you a lot about the band. They're not, you know, this isn't particularly dangerous, subversive, scary music. Of course, in 2009, there's almost no music that's dangerous or subversive or scary. I can't remember the last time I saw a story about, you know, parents railing against anything. You know, even, you know, they're not even, nobody's even scared by hip hop anymore. It's very sad. I have no idea what 10-year-olds, you know, who want to freak out their parents have to do now. Actually, you know, tattoo 3 6s on their forehead or something. I don't know. But you know, what you learn is that the status of this band right now is that Gibbard is really focusing on this record with Jay Farrar. You know, it's a one-off project. It's the sort of thing that bands do when they're taking a year off from touring or being around each other. And that's something bands do now that they didn't do 30 years ago. Bands now are much better about sort of regulating their own time and have a lot more sway with record companies about regulating their own time. What breaks up, there are only a couple things that ever break up bands. Fights about money. Fights about money and being just royally sick of each other are the two big ones. The Clash is a good example. The Clash did an extraordinary amount of work in 5 years. And I remember seeing a documentary about Joe Strummer a couple of years ago after he died. And there's a clip of, I'm sorry? Yes, yeah. And there's a clip of Bono saying, you know, the biggest tragedy about the Clash is they're not still around. And this is clearly, you know, this is a great example of a band that if someone had told them in 1981 or after Sandinista or something like that, you have to take a break. You have to take a year off and just be away from each other and write if you want to, don't write if you want to, sit on a beach, just get away from each other, recharge. They'd be around today. You know, there's a band coming to the Fun Fest next week called Coalesce. They broke up very acrimoniously in 1999 and you know, just freaking hated each other. And, you know, took a good decade to just be away from each other. And they're young enough so that they put out a new record. And, you know, I think a lot of people are like, "Ooh, reunion records always suck." But I mean, that's going to be the reality of popular music, especially rock bands, especially, you know, band entities. They're going to have to take some time off from here on in. Anyway, that's a long way of saying this is the sort of record that you make when you're taking a year off, but you still have a bunch of songs. You know, Ben Gibbard is the songwriter. So if you're going to see Ben Gibbard this year, I may be talking out my ass on this, and we'll check that in a minute. If you're going to see Ben Gibbard this year, it's probably going to be touring on this record. But the way to check that is with this. Now, this is not always accurate, but it does give you a pretty good idea of who's working and when they're working. And this is going to be, because nobody can make money off of records anymore, the model for the industry is going to revert back to what it was for about 1,000 years. A guy getting up in the morning and going out and playing songs for a bunch of people and hopefully getting money for them. And then going to the next town and playing songs and getting money for them. And, you know, repeat until they pass out. Death Cab for Cutie. Okay. No concert dates found for this artist. Which, you know, is evidence of what I was saying earlier. If they're taking a year off, they're focusing on different stuff. So if you've done these things, you have a pretty good idea of what Death Cab for Cutie is about, having never heard them before. Now, how many people, I asked this question yesterday in the talk I gave over in the hotel. How many people have purchased a CD in the last 3 months? It's law-abiding citizens. How many people have downloaded music for free from the internet? Okay. How many people go to schools that specifically prohibit you from doing that? Okay. Yeah, this is something I have no knowledge of. I don't know how colleges have responded to this. Some of them have been very aggressive, some of them haven't. Now, do they ban you from doing it on campus? Or how does it work? Yes.
I know at Penn State, there's definitely a policy in place that says you're not allowed to basically download or pirate anything. Students still do it,
okay.
But if you're caught doing it, you are always like the studio makes a case against such and such student, and Penn State has a system in place where they protect the student. They give them a warning basically, and they have to go to some anti-piracy session or whatever, and they get off.
Drunk driving class.
And, yeah, basically. And but Penn State, I know for example, had this system called Ruckus, which is basically like a campus authorized LimeWire that's in cahoots or whatever with all the record studios.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, my school. Well, because I work at like the computer help desk, and we handle all those kind of things. And I go to TCU, Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. And like, you're not supposed to do it, but they can't stop you from doing it. And then the only way that you're caught is if like the company makes the case against you, like the RIAA or like Sony or anything like that. They'll send a letter to like our dean, and then the dean forwards the letter to us, and we have to disable the student from the internet, and they can't get back on until like they do this really lame email message that they send out to 20 people. It's like, hey, my name is Mark Cruz. Sorry, I downloaded. You shouldn't download either. It's bad. And then after they send out 20 emails, you get re-enabled into the network. But you have 3 strikes.
So vague humiliation is sort of the way to go.
Yeah, like, and you have 3 strikes. So if you get caught 3 times within 1 year, you are permanently disabled. Like the second time is probation. The third time is permanent. But I mean, it resets every year because I personally have been caught twice. But I'm not in trouble because it was like once freshman year and once this year. So.
The only reason I ask is and I said this yesterday, so bear with me if you were this other thing. The defining story about music of the past 10 years is not aesthetic, it's technological. The way music was delivered in 1998 is so unbelievably different from the way it's delivered in 2008 and 2009 that, well, I mean, you're seeing the effects all around you. There's an old joke about Hollywood. The screenwriter William Goldman once said, the key to Hollywood is that nobody knows anything, meaning that, you know, the reason that people get so stressed and that movie executives are so insane is that you're betting millions and millions of dollars against something that you literally have no idea if people will like. Like you might have a sense of it, and you do audience testing and all that crap, but you really don't know if something's going to tank or not. That's where the record labels are right now. Nobody knows anything. They don't know how to make money from this stuff. They don't know what the next step is. They don't know any of it. And so it's a very interesting time to be covering this industry, especially from a business and technological standpoint. Which brings me to, I'm trying to think of ways that we'll be able to let's stay with the death cab for cutie example. I'm staring at that video camera worrying now, but